Hello, and welcome to Just Therapist Things, where we talk all things therapy. My name is Jordan, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist from California. I'm a private practice owner of Vital Mind Therapy, where I see clients virtually and in person. I also lead support groups for a nonprofit cancer support organization. Thanks for listening. Hi all. Today I'm so excited to welcome my friend and colleague Ghadir to the episode today. Ghadir, it's so great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. So excited.
Awesome. So Ghadir and I know each other because she was intern at Cancer Support Community during her graduate practicum experience, and that is where I lead support groups. And so we met there, and I feel like right away I just knew that Ghadir was someone special and was going to do amazing things in this field. And so we connected, and now Ghadir is an associate, graduated from her program. She'll tell everyone a little bit more about that. But I'm so glad to have you here just to share everything that's been going on in your life and to help others who may be in a graduate program, going into associateship, or thinking about entering a therapy graduate program. That's just kind of who we're aimed towards today. So I'm so glad you're here to talk about this topic.
Me too. And if you are at the point, whoever's listening, of embarking on your associateship, congratulations. It's such an exciting and also terrifying time. So hopefully this episode kind of just gives you a little bit more direction and insight into what it's all about because I have so much to share and I'm so excited.
Yeah, awesome. I know. I'm excited too because I went through this process in 2021. So, that's crazy to think about that it was 3 years ago. And so I am curious to talk to you as well to see if things have changed throughout the whole, BBS, like hours, getting your number, all of that. So this will be interesting for me too. So first, can you tell the listeners a bit about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Ghadir Saad. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist and an associate professional clinical counselor. I went to Azusa Pacific University where I took the 2 year route, which was a very courageous move. It was super intense, but it got me out of grad school quicker. So that was just what fit for me in my life. I graduated at the end of June and I applied for my associate number. Honestly, it was like right after the 4th of July, which kind of stalled things just a tiny bit. And I received that number for my AMFT about a month later, which was very surprising. I know the BBS can kind of take a long time with these things, so I was really happy that it only took about a month. But as Jordan mentioned, I did my practicum internship at Cancer Support Community, Greater San Gabriel Valley, where I co facilitated the bereavement support group, the caregiver group, and also worked with individuals and couples just navigating grief and loss and life transitions and everything else that comes with a cancer diagnosis. And proud to share that I'm now at a group practice in La Crescenta, Montrose, where I work with kids, families, couples who are coming in with a wide range of presenting problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. And throughout all of that, you also stayed at Cancer Support Community for a little bit longer than needed just to kind of like wrap things up. So you were, post grad school still working and also applying for jobs and applying for your associate number. So I'm sure it's been crazy, but how are you feeling about these last few months? How has post graduation life been?
I have spent a lot of time thinking about that exact question because if I'm being honest, I'm still processing it. If we know something about grad school, it's that it's the most intense, chaotic time of your life. There's so much that's happening, so much that's not happening, maybe things that you wish you could have been doing, but you couldn't because you didn't have time. The focus was really just on school and learning the craft of becoming a therapist. So I think that life post grad has been a huge adjustment. I've been so accustomed to the fast paced life of grad school across practicum and classes and just everyday life that I was almost addicted to the chaos, if that makes sense. Jordan, I don't know if you
Hmm.
felt that way when you were in school. But at the same time, as crazy as this might sound, there was so much comfort in the chaos. I knew what to expect. I knew what was
Hmm.
happening on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Mondays and Wednesdays, right? Like there was that certainty that was there. So the second that I got hooded and, things were over, it was just stillness.
Hmm.
I did not do well with that. I didn't sit well with the fact that my life had gone from 100 to 0 overnight, and it
Hmm.
was extremely uncomfortable for me.
Hmm.
Curious to hear about what your experience was like because for me, I mean, I almost was like in withdrawal of grad school. I wanted to go back to that time.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. I think it is so strange because, as you said, you do have the comfort of structure and also the comfort of, being in your cohort where you probably, made really good friends as I did. And, you have your professors and things like that. And then just all of a sudden, I mean, you still have that community, but it just looks a little different and everyone's kind of going their separate ways.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, and I'm trying to remember also from when kind of we were talking about it after you graduated, but you took some time off. Like you had a little time where you were just kind of chilling, like, looking for jobs. Is that right?
Yeah, so graduated at the end of June and then didn't start working at the group practice till the end of August. And so there was about 2 solid months of, I want to say like nothingness, but in those 2 months, I don't think I used my time wisely to really relax, reset, and restore myself from what I had just gone through in the last 2 years. I really spent those 2 months on top of all the change that was happening in my life outside of, work related things. I spent those months looking for a job,
Hmm.
which was a whole thing in and of itself. It was really challenging to do the job search, and I'm, eager to share about what I kept on running into in my job search that was really challenging for me. But in
Hmm.
retrospect, I do think that the time off was needed. Again, you can only process so much when you're in the thing, right? It was just, I mean, hardship after hardship in grad school. And how can you really process it when you're still going through it? So the
Hmm.
last 2 months were necessary for me to just reflect and, grieve the things that I didn't have time to grieve during grad school and celebrate also the accomplishments that I had made.
Hmm.
It was just figuring out the balance between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the word that you used, grieve, too. I mean, that made me think about just the nature of cancer support community where you did your practicum experience as well and where I did my practicum experience, and there was a lot of grief there that I feel like was maybe, I don't know, just because it's a heavier population. We work, directly with death and loss and cancer. That, I mean, it's really difficult to kind of wrap up
Yeah.
your time there. So yeah, so I definitely agree with that. Found it challenging. And
Hmm.
I'm also jealous that you took some time off because I was kind of crazy and I went like straight into work right after. So I maybe had like, 2, 3 weeks, but like during those 2, 3 weeks, I was like doing trainings and like, preparing, like getting all my documents signed for my job, and like moving. And so it was just kind of crazy as
Hmm.
well. But I feel like that time is really good to take, but also, as you said, I'm sure it's really difficult because you're like, whoa, I just did those past crazy, fast, chaotic 2 years, and
Yeah.
now it's just silence and uncertainty.
Even when I say the word grieve, like I say it with such a heavy heart and a heavy chest because when you are trying to learn how to become a therapist, right? It's an art, it's a craft, you're really trying to get it down. That is really, really difficult in and of itself. And on top of that, I was dealing with, and we were dealing with as a community, so much loss right off the bat.
Hmm.
And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that. I don't think I had the internal resources to deal with it. I don't think that I had the right coping mechanisms. And then when you couple that with whatever, we're dealing with personally in our own lives, how do you hold all that together? And so
Hmm.
I noticed that for me, I really dropped everything else and I was only so focused on the cancer world. And then the second that that stopped, it was like, here is the rest of my life too.
Hmm.
What am I supposed to do with all this? Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so grateful that we have such a strong community at CSC and that
Hmm.
our Monday supervisions are just our support groups where we have time to process and grieve, and
Hmm.
show up for one another and really talk about the things that are going on that are really challenging because
Hmm.
we're people too, right? We're not just these superhuman
Hmm.
therapists.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like still, being kind of a consistent group facilitator as well, we go through our own grieving process because we lose you guys when you're done with your internship. And so that was, definitely tough too. And we still miss you, of course. But yeah, so happy for you where you are now. So it seems like getting your associate number was pretty easy, it sounds like. Or I mean, not easy, but it like went fast.
Yeah, it did. And if there's one word that I can use to describe the process, it would be underwhelming.
Hmm.
I thought that it was going to be this like giant packet where I had all my hour logs and like supervision agreements, like all the things, right, that you are just forced to deal with in the beginning of
Hmm.
any sort of, traineeship or whatever it might be that you're starting. And it was underwhelming because it was straight up just an online application from the BBS website where your school really sends out half of the items that the BBS is requesting of you on your behalf,
Hmm.
and then you submit that live scan form and your check, right? Like they really want that check, and
Yeah.
they'll process that check before they even look at your application. But yeah, it was very simple. Sent it through the USPS and they got it a couple of days later, and then you're only really notified if you get your number or if you're missing something, right?
Hmm.
So I was lucky that everything was okay and got my number a month later, which is a really, really cool feeling to finally be official, to have something more than just a paper certificate that says you're a trainee and have completed X amount of units to start seeing clients.
Hmm.
So that was a really cool moment to see my number.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
that's great that it was so kind of seamless for you because I guess for me, then it was everything was still so backlogged from COVID. And because when I graduated as well, then I had been doing online grad school for like basically the whole time, like more than half of my grad school. And so it was even a question of like, oh my gosh, are we going to have in person graduation? And we ended up doing it at the Coliseum, which was super cool because they wanted it like outdoors, so everyone was like, no COVID connection. But yeah, so that was really crazy because I remember right after graduation, basically everyone in my cohort went home and like did everything like right away because we were like, oh my gosh, it's gonna take so long since everything is so backed up with COVID. So I think mine ended up taking like 3 or 4 months. It was kind of
Wow.
bad. Yeah,
Okay.
and it was like constantly checking the California BBS Facebook group being like, where's my application? Like, what's going
Yeah.
on? And unfortunately it was kind of the same for licensure, which was not great. But I'm so glad that it was easier for you and all good. And I guess kind of going back a little bit too. So how did you feel just like ending grad school? I guess a few questions and like going into, but did you feel supported by your school? I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of knowledge about what to do, like what the next steps were. And also, did you feel comfortable with the amount of hours that you gained during your practicum
Mm-hmm.
experience?
Yeah, it's funny because about halfway through grad school, we were all like, hey, applying for associateship is coming up. How do we do this? I was surprised there wasn't much emphasis on how to apply. We did get sent out an email about how to do it. It was like a recorded video that someone had made a couple years back. But it did kind of just feel like we were figuring it out as we went. And then I came to learn that it actually wasn't as complicated as I thought it was. Again, very underwhelming. You could really figure it out just by reading the BBS website. So
Hmm.
didn't feel so stressed around that. My worry was more around, what if I didn't send something? Then it's going to backtrack the process. What if I miss something? It was more about that, but
Hmm.
very straightforward. As far as the hours that I gained, I mean, I am so glad that CSC provided, probably both of us with a lot and a ton of experience, so many hours across, facilitating those support groups, taking on the individual clients, and then also orienting new individuals into our community. I
Hmm.
felt very confident with what I was coming out of traineeship with, which almost kind of gave me a little bit of a buffer and a cushion, I think, to take time to find a good job that really
Hmm.
aligned with me and felt congruent. So there wasn't so much pressure around that, because I know for some folks it can be, and that's
Hmm.
difficult. I understand that too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. I felt so grateful having Cancer Sport Community as my practicum site because I remember towards the end of my grad program, then there were so many people in my cohort that were really stressed about getting their hours. They were like really scrambling for kind of any hours they could do. Some had to do more like another kind of practicum for the summer because they didn't have enough hours to graduate. And I feel like we were just so so I feel like we're doing major plugs for Cancer Support Community right now, but it's really just the best. And that's
Yeah,
why I'm still there, 4 years later. And like, I know, you loved it as well. So it's just great place for anyone who's in grad school in California, Cancer Support Community.
100%. And it's so supportive, and you just learn so much about grief and loss, which, if we know one thing about that, grief and loss doesn't only apply to a death that has occurred, right? It can be
Hmm.
living grief, living loss. And coming out of traineeship with so much experience in that realm, I feel like is really setting me up for success around similar themes that might come up in my group practice, right? So
Hmm.
I've had people say, like, you only know how to work with death or with chronic illness. And my response is no, it's not just that. What
Hmm.
about the life transition? What about the loss of ability? What about the identity shifts? Like all of those things that come with the cancer diagnosis. It's not
Hmm.
just about cancer.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, just like normal anxiety, depression, like body image, relationship challenges, literally everything. So, yeah, absolutely. So, what were you looking for in your first job post graduation?
Yeah, perfect segue, because I was just going to say that, CSC does offer a children's support group, right? And if you're lucky enough to be in that support group as a facilitator, you'll get those kid hours. But if not, then you really are, starting your associateship without that kid experience. And that was the case for me.
Hmm.
In my job search, I was looking for a place that would offer me those kid hours, because I know for the AMFT licensure, you need 500 of, I forget what it is, like the 1750 or what it might be.
Hmm.
Um, they need to be kid, family, and couples hours. And so my anxiety was really telling me, like, you need to go to a place that will offer you that, because if not, you might be 2 years into associateship and not have that 500
Hmm.
requirement fulfilled, and then it's
Yeah.
just going to prolong the process. So I was looking for, a place that would provide me that. I What I think was really helpful for me was that pre-graduation and post-graduation, I literally went on to Psychology Today and was searching for therapists as if I was a client, right? Like looking for what I needed, which was very kid
Hmm.
oriented, maybe support groups, just things like that. And I would reach out to the therapist, introduce myself, can we grab a cup of coffee and connect?
Hmm.
And so nice. Like, this community of therapists are really, really amazing, because they always said yes. And so
Hmm.
I can't even tell you how many therapists I connected with, to just learn more about them, learn more about the work that they're doing. What was it like for you post grad? And just connecting in that sense, because it offered me a lot of insight and guidance. And there was always
Hmm.
someone that they could also connect me to. So we're all just like this
Hmm.
one big woven, community, and it's really, really neat. Um,
Yeah. That's honestly so smart. And yeah, I didn't like, I wouldn't not think of doing that, but I feel like that's such a smart thing to do. And you're already, by doing that, you're building your network, which
you
is
are,
so huge
you
in the
are.
community. And I feel like a lot of associates have a hard time with that. So very smart, very smart. Good job.
Yeah, I had to be resourceful, because I felt like the job isn't going to be handed to me. I really need to go out and find it. And my therapist and I always joke around, because she's like, "When was the last time a door came to you? Like, grab your chalk pen and draw the door, make the door, and seek the opportunity." So I did that, and I appreciate this part of the conversation, because the challenge that I kept on running into was being told by different sites that you don't have the kid experience.
Mm.
And that's a fact. But what I also knew about myself was I am here to seek that. I'm here to learn
Hmm.
that. I want to become more developed in that, right? Like teach me. And in
Hmm.
this field, you can't teach somebody how to care. You can teach them
Yeah.
intervention, you can teach them theory, you can teach them how to work with, whatever population. You can't teach someone how to care. So that was
Hmm.
really hard for me because I felt like my genuine care and regard for this work was there. Yet these people out there weren't seeing that in me, and
Hmm.
they just kept saying, we're seeking someone who has that experience already. If you
Hmm.
want someone with the experience, I mean, how am I going to get that if you're not willing to teach me,
Yeah,
right? So I
exactly.
felt helpless. I think that's when I started to reach out to you, Jordan, and was like, help me. I don't know what to do anymore. I felt very, very devastated and just sad, and
Hmm.
let down until the right group of people saw me for who I am and for what I'm willing to really do to learn and
Hmm.
just do better and do better. So really grateful for, my current supervisors and where I'm currently working, because they saw that in me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah. And I feel like that was something about you that kind of just always shines through, but just like your curiosity and your willingness to learn, which I think is so important. I mean, being a new therapist, but also just being a therapist forever, is that we're always learning and growing and always taking in information. And I feel like that's something that you really exude, which is awesome. But yeah, that's really interesting too, how places were like, no, you don't have like experience. Like we're looking for someone with experience because as you said, I mean, how are we going to get that
Yeah,
experience?
we all start somewhere, right? Like
Hmm.
and I think that was the most challenging thing for me was, we all started somewhere, and I understand it's
Hmm.
taking a risk on a person who you don't know, right? These people had no reason to really trust me, and that I was, saying all these things and that I was meaning what I was saying, but
Hmm.
it's a risk, and it's a good, beautiful one to take, right? To help develop an associate, to help grow them. I mean, I imagine it's so rewarding, and I don't know. So that was unfortunate that I kept on
Hmm.
bumping into that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That really is though, if anyone whenever anyone asks me and they're like, what's like the one piece of advice you have post graduation, like going into your first job, I say try to get your kid hours in right away because as you said, you don't want to be 2 years down the road scrambling for those last little kid hours and having to like switch jobs just to get the kid hours. And I mean, it's just a huge mess. So yeah, so I definitely agree with that. And that's what I did too. I was like, I want to look for I wanted my criteria. I was like, I want a group practice because I want to be surrounded by other therapists to learn from. I want to be in like an area where I don't have to drive too far. So I was like, pretty close to home and working with kids.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing for folks that are interested in the group practice, idea, which I think is the best thing ever, is the DMH world, right? Like community
Hmm.
mental health. Jordan, I know you were at group practice, and I'm also
Hmm.
there now too. And it's quality working environment and quality supervision. I connected with a couple sites. I did a couple interviews, a post grad at DMH sites, and it just didn't align with what I was seeking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on the person. And I feel like the cool thing is that there are so many opportunities
Mhm.
post graduation. I mean, for DMH, for school based work, for nonprofits, for, group practice, private practice, clinics, there are really cool opportunities. But yeah, for anyone listening, I would definitely recommend trying to get the kid hours in soon. So which you are doing. So how has it been for you? You've been in your group practice for a few weeks now or a month. How long has it
Weeks.
been?
Yeah, I
Hmm.
started at the end of August. It's been an adjustment, I think, because what I was so used to in my practicum was brief therapy. It was about 9 sessions. You develop rapport very quickly,
Hmm.
really hit the ground running from the minute that you make that initial contact with your clients. How crazy that there's a world that exists where you can actually take your time in developing a
Hmm.
relationship with your clients, where
Yeah.
there's no time on how long you can see your client for. I mean, that to me just
Hmm.
blows my mind. And I'm noticing that, and I've been processing this in supervision too, that I'm ready to just take off with it. And
Hmm.
It's so much slower in the private practice. So
Hmm.
it's not that I don't think I can do it. I'm discerning between this being hard and I can't do it and this just looking different and I can do it.
Hmm.
And I think this just highlights the fact that it's a continuous learning process being a therapist. Like
Hmm.
you're never going to fully arrive.
Yeah.
I'm still learning, you're still learning, and we're all still
Hmm.
learning. And the imposter syndrome that comes through is something. The little intruder voice in your head is like, you can't do it, you can't do it. But you absolutely can, and I can, and you can, we all can.
Absolutely. That was something too that I really struggled with coming out of practicum,
Mhm.
where we did have a really interesting, it was brief therapy. And I remember talking to people at my new group practice who they were like, oh yeah, I've been seeing this person for 2 years, for, whatever, however long. And to me, I was like, whoa, that is crazy. Like, I cannot imagine, being with someone doing therapy for that long. But now here I am, and I've been seeing some of my clients that I still have today, I've been seeing for 3 years now. So since I was an associate, which
Yes.
is wild. And yeah, you kind of just learn to adjust to it, but it is definitely a learning curve. I mean, no matter what your experience was before grad school or your practicum experience, I mean, it is. I feel like you have to be so willing to learn and just like
Yeah.
soak up all the knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's very cool that you're doing that. So you're working with mostly kids and teens. Is that what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's mainly kid, teen. We of course we're open to everybody, so families come through, couples come through, and
Hmm.
individuals. And I think what I appreciate the most about all of this right now that I'm going through is that, let's be honest, if you think you can be comfortable in this job, like you got to get that out of your head, right? You got to get used to the discomfort. You have to get used to really being challenged, being stretched thin sometimes,
Hmm.
and just going through those growing pains. And so I like to think that I became pretty good at what I was doing at Cancer Support Community. I
Hmm.
felt almost like this level of mastery after so much hardship to get to that point. And now I am going through the motions of, okay, I don't know all the kid interventions. I don't know
Hmm.
that, a teen who comes into a session and who isn't speaking to you is actually still information, right? Like these are
Hmm.
things that I'm aware that I don't know. And then you go through that continuous process of you don't know what you don't know. And then you know what you don't know. And then you kind of get good at the thing. And then you start right back, at square one. And
Hmm.
I'm just going through that and I'm giving myself some grace through it.
Hmm.
Because, like I mentioned earlier, I care. I care
Hmm.
about this work. And if you have that, then I think you're going to be okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I continuously, I mean, have to remind myself because I feel like sometimes you're not, I mean, just because we're humans too, you're not on your A game all the time. You're not the best version of yourself. And I have to remind myself that, okay, just being there and listening and validating someone and sitting with someone through whatever they're going through, sometimes that's enough. Most of the time that's enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. So, do you have a kind of timeline towards licensure? Do you have an idea in your head of when you want to get licensed?
Yeah, I've thought about this, but I haven't stressed it too much. I think ideally, I've given myself like the 2.5 year range,
Hmm.
just because for me, it's all about quality, not quantity, and I'd much rather take my time and ensure that I'm, you know, just really good at what I'm doing before I just jump to say that I have my license, right? Like,
Hmm.
I imagine that even when I have my license, I'm still going to be learning the way that I am now. So, I'm not stressing it too much. I don't want to put
Hmm.
any more pressure on myself. I just really want to be present through all of this. And
Hmm.
I stress the present part because going through grad school, I didn't feel present in life.
Hmm.
And I don't want to go through that again,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just taking every moment, being present, just not really worrying about
Yeah.
the future. That's a great mindset to have.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's hard when, I mean, when there's pressure in getting hours and licensure, you're really, I mean, you aren't present for your clients and you're not really learning and absorbing how much you could be. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Good, good. So, what is just kind of a final piece of advice that you would tell to someone who is maybe in a therapy graduate program, thinking about graduating soon, about to become an associate?
I have really, really thought this one through. I think that when you start your associateship, it will feel like you're back at square one, where you're questioning everything and feeling not confident, maybe not even competent or capable. And I really want to let people know that that doesn't mean that you're not capable. It's just going to look different, right? It's going to look different than what you knew during your practicum. Um, it's a part of the journey, these challenges, and we all have to go through them to get to where we want to be. And the cool part is that you've already proven to yourself that you can rise to these challenges through practicum. I mean, hands down, it had to have been a challenging experience. So really trust in your abilities, ask the questions, and do not shy away from the discomfort, because that's where all the growth happens, right? In the discomfort.
Mhm.
And I think I've learned that the hard way. Um, and yeah, just trust that you have everything you need within you. That's the
Mhm.
biggest thing, really.
Yeah, I love that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. And I feel like going off of that as well is that what we talked about, kind of remembering that you do have the support, right? You do have
Yeah.
your cohort still, you do have the professors. I feel like the therapy community, whether in a graduate program or outside, everyone kind of understands
Yeah.
what we're all going through, and so it's usually, hopefully, very supportive. And so if anyone needs to lean on someone through that time, like, I know, we talk a lot still, and you can always text me, ask me questions for things, but just
Sure.
kind of leaning on support when you need it.
Yeah. And I think another important aspect of all this too is it's wonderful to have support and community, and trusting relationship within your workplace. But having that
Hmm.
outside is going to be everything too, right? You want to make sure that you
Hmm.
have the right people that you can turn to, be it, former supervisors. I know for me, Rachel and Allison still are my people, and I still go to them for support and guidance. So, former supervisors, professors, classmates, family, and friends, just building that support system up, because you're going to want to lean on people when times get hard, right? This isn't an easy field, and it's hard. It's hard.
Hmm.
What we do is really, really difficult, and having the people to lean on it really carries you through.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, Gadir, it was so great to have you. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and I wish you all the best in your associateship. But thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. If there's any way that I could help give back to people who, I was just in their position a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago. So if there's any way that I can give back, I'm always happy to do it. We're all just one big, tight knit community. And also, Jordan, want to tell you congrats on your private practice. You
Thank you.
are and have been such an inspiration for me, which is why I keep on coming back to you for your insight and wisdom, too. So, really proud of you and happy for you, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, and maybe I can have you back in like 6 months, a year, and we
Yeah,
can do this again, and you can update
absolutely.
us on how
Yes.
everything is going. But yeah, so great to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Just Therapist Things, where we talk all things therapy. I'll talk to you soon.